Rancher's Homestead. Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to can some kidney beans, and beans need to be canned in the pressure canner. So I have my Denali Canning pressure canner, the tanker here, and it has several inches of water in it, and I just have it sitting here on my stovetop. Now normally I would take my beans and I would put them in a pot, fill it with water, and soak them overnight. That breaks down the phytic acid in the beans, makes them easier to digest. It also absorbs some of the water so that you get a better idea of how many beans to put into your jars, all of that. But I did not get my beans soaked last night, so we're gonna do the quick soak method, and I'm gonna show you how to do that today. Now with my canner, I'm actually going to double this recipe. So, well, it's not really a recipe, but I'm going to double the amount of jars that I put into the canner and use the stacking method so that I can get more jars of beans onto my shelf so I don't have to do this as often. The cool thing about the Denali Canning is you can stack them. You just need an extra rack to put on top, and you can get that on their website. Now I'm going to use this complete guide to pressure canning. It's one of my favorite cookbooks for ready-made meals and beans and all of that. It has a chart right here in the book, and I'll link this book in the description, but it tells you all the different dry beans and how much dry beans you'll need per pint size jar or per quart size jar. And so this makes it really easy to take out the guesswork so you don't over put beans into your pot to soak or cook and then you don't have enough jars, or you did too much and you can't fit them, you have to run your canner twice. It eliminates all of that. So for kidney beans, it's a half a cup per pint. I always do pint-sized jars. For my size family, I don't typically double a recipe unless I am going to save some for leftovers for another meal. And so when I'm following a recipe, a pint-sized jar is the most like a can of beans from the store. It's the most similar size. And so I just use it one for one. So if something calls for a can of kidney beans, I'll take one pint-sized jar off my shelf and add it to the recipe. And it works perfectly that way. So that's why I always do pint-sized jars. Also, pint-sized jars are the only jars that you can stack with the canner. You can't do it in quarts. So I can just get more onto my shelf. Okay, so I'm going to calculate in my head how many jars. I know I can fit 7 jars on the bottom, and then I can essentially do 7 jars, probably more like 6 because there is a rim and the rack is not quite as big. It doesn't go the whole length of it. So I am going to, just to be safe, do enough for 12 pint-sized jars in my pot here. So which means I have a half a cup here, and I am going to scoop 12 of these and put them into my pot. Then I'm going to fill them with water and stick them onto my stovetop and turn it on to high to bring to a boil. Okay, now that I have my beans in here, I've done at least 2 inches above where the beans are so that as they absorb the water, that I don't run out of water in my pot. I turned it on to high, and I'm gonna go ahead and let this come to a boil. I'm gonna let it boil for about 15 minutes, and then after that, I'm gonna turn it off. I'm gonna stick my lid on it, and I'm just gonna let it rest for 1 hour. So this is kind of a quick soak method. If you run out of time or you don't get a chance to soak them the night before, this is a good way to get that soak in before you can them to help break down that phytic acid. Okay, my beans have soaked for about an hour or so, and we're gonna get ready to get them into my jars here. So I've washed all of my jars with warm soapy water. Before we get them into the jars, I want to go over a few tools and things that will make it easier when you're doing the stacking method. The number one thing that you have to have is an additional rack. So there is a rack at the bottom of the canner. It